from the Lexical core team. Today I'm going to walk you through setting up a basic lexical editor with Lexical React. So let's get started. Over here I have a basic package already set up. So this package is actually set up to re-export the editor as a React component that can be downloaded from npm. So the configuration is a little different than what you would normally expect. But we'll start with this and go through the documentation and see how far we can get. So this is what we have now for an editor. As you can see, it's really not an editor at all. It's just the scaffolding of a React component. It says hello world. That's what you're seeing over here in this browser window. So it's just rendering hello world. And what we'll do is go through the process of kind of transforming this from what we see now into a lexical editor. So if we go to the documentation and look at the getting started with React portion, then the first thing we should do is install Lexical and Lexical React. I've actually already done that, as you saw in the package JSON. There are peer dependencies for me because once again, this is published as a consumable package. And so we would expect the consumer of the package to install these dependencies. In your project, they'll probably just be regular dependencies. Unless you're doing something similar. So already got this part done. So flipping back to the editor here. The next thing is we have basically a plain text editor using Lexical React. And so Lexical React is a package that is exposing bindings for React to make it easier to use Lexical with React. And so if we scroll down a bit, we can see here we have an editor component that has some initial configuration and then a series Lexical Composer component that takes that initial configuration, and then a series of child components which are actually plugins for Lexical. So the plugin interface for Lexical React is basically such that you create React components that are structured in a certain way, make those children of Lexical Composer, and that is how you extend the functionality of the editor, or at least it's the primary way. So what we can do is really just start with most of this. I'll take the error handler. I think I can just probably drop this right on top and maybe change some types. Actually, back up for 1 sec here. I'm just going to take this part of the component. And then obviously I have a bunch of red. I haven't gotten the auto import stuff in my IDE yet, so we'll just copy these things over. We won't need all of them, but do the easy thing for now and take all of this, and then we'll take theme and on change. And then we'll take our error handler. Actually, let's leave on change out for now. We'll revisit that a little bit later. So I'll just get rid of this. And we don't need the autofocus plugin. Actually, let's strip it down even more and we'll build it up. So we'll go with that history plugin for now too. And I need the error handler. So Lexical does require you to register an error handler, and that's just so that you're actually getting informed in some way of errors that occur inside the editor itself. And so for us, we're just going to console.error. In reality, you might want to log this or do any number of things, but that's just to keep it simple. With a theme, we'd also probably have a theme in real life that would be a bunch of class names or key values. So it would be like a string and then a class name, and there's an interface for that defined that we'll probably go through in a future video. But for now, we'll just leave it as an empty object. We're just trying to get the basic editor functionality set up here. So as you can see, we've got basically what we've done here is we've got Lexical Composer, which is the base of any lexical React-based lexical editor. And it's taken our initial config in, which is very bare bones. And then we use the plain text plugin, which is basically just giving you wiring up a lot of user events and things like that. Lexical Core out of the box won't do really anything to respond to user events. It's just a reconciler and the update logic and the state logic. So it really depends on you to listen for keyboard input, mouse events, whatever, and then update the editor accordingly using the imperative APIs. That's just what the core library itself does. So Lexical React exposes plain text plugin, which does a lot of that for you, and we'll see how that works shortly. So looks like we've got the basics of what we need. So let's save that and check out what we have over in the browser. Okay, so I see the placeholder, which is coming from right here. It looks like we can't click on that, but we can click right above it. So what's happening here is this is our content editable. This is the lexical editor itself, and that's unstyled right now completely. The placeholder is also there, but it's not positioned yet. So what we need to do is position that inside the editor itself. But first, to make that a little easier, we're probably going to want to make this editor a little bit bigger so it's not like just a text input, all right? So let's start with that. So we can take our content editable and give it a class name. And the class name could be really creative. It can be something like content editable. And then we can just take that and go over to our CSS component. We'll give this a height. And then, oh, that's not quite right. Let's try this. Okay, still not great, but I think that's because we have some other component probably constraining it. So let's see exactly what's going on here. We have this div, this app class, or this root class. Let's check out root. So if we go over to here, let's just do, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, so because this isn't really related to lexical, but if we go 100%, what do we get? Okay, cool. So now we have something that looks a little more like an editor. Maybe it doesn't have to be quite so tall. Let's go 300px. All right, cool. So now we have something that looks a little more sane like an editor, except we have this weird text align center, which I think is, yeah, on the root. So let's get that out of here. Okay, cool. So now we're aligned over to the left, I think. Cool, all right. So let's give it a little, our editor, a little bit of padding, because I think what's happening right now is we're not able to see the cursor because it's interfering with the box. So there it goes. Yeah, so now you can see the cursor, which is a good thing. Cool, okay. So maybe actually while we're here, we can just give it a little border radius so we can see it. Let's go 1 pixel solid white. Or I guess we can be a little fancier. Just go with the short hex there. Cool. All right, so now we should have a white border around. Oh, sorry, border radius. Spot border. Yep, there we go. Now we're good. So we have our cursor, everything. You can see like so like the placeholder's there. As I type, when I type, it disappears. There's an empty. There's a check in Lexical plain text plugin that's checking like if it's empty, then show the placeholder. If not, then don't show the placeholder. And so once you start to type, the placeholder disappears, but it's not in the right position, so it looks really weird right now. So we can't really position this for, at least we haven't thought of a good way to position this for consumers of Lexical yet, because like it's really just how you style your editor can change it. So the thing right now, you have to just position it within your component. So the way you would want to do that is probably by like absolutely positioning it, and that's pretty straightforward to do. So you just have like a div that's your placeholder, give that a class. So it would just be, let's be creative again and call it placeholder. And then we'll go over to, let's save that, go over to here, do this class, and we'll just say this is position absolute top 0. So that's just going to put it at the top of, actually the way absolute positioning works is that puts it at the top of its closest positioned ancestor, and that's probably not what we want right now. We need to position one of the closer ancestors so that it's actually, we want to position our editor container, right? So this should be positioned so that the placeholder is positioned relative to this instead of going all the way up and being positioned relative to the body or whatever it is right now. So the way we want to do that is probably, where is that? Probably an app. So I think this is the wrapper. Let me double check. Yeah, so this is the wrapper around the editor. So we'll just, once again, like, not much to do with lexical here, but important to see how we go through the steps of positioning it. So this would be, we'll just call it editor wrapper for now. We can take this class name and we'll apply it, and we'll say this is going to be position relative. And so now you see the placeholder snaps into the place. It's now positioned relative to its closest ancestor, this position, which is now the editor wrapper. So we got that. Still not quite right because we're positioning it top 0. I want to move it down a bit so that we're actually in line with the cursor. That takes a little additional movement here. So we'll go and say, sorry, first let's do finish top. I think probably like, let's call it 16. So that looks pretty close. And then cool. So yeah, we're not quite right there because we have, I think, some padding on this that we probably need to, so we might have to actually play around a bit with the, or we could say on this, something like that. That should, oh, sorry. Getting my directions messed up. All right. Okay, so now we're good. So now if we click on the editor, we can type. Pretty cool. So that's pretty straightforward. Maybe we should give it a quick title. We'll go over to this. We'll call it, well, let's not bother with that now, actually. So we have an editor, Lexical editor. It works. The placeholder's positioned. It's got a border. We're able to type basic plain text. So no issues there. So let's talk about how you would add a plugin to this. So a couple ways, a couple things we can kind of talk about here. One is like just adding a plugin out of the box. So like right now, if you actually type this and I do Command Z, nothing happens. There's no undo redo functionality involved. So what we can do to solve that is Lexical actually just you kind of saw it earlier probably. We have this history plugin, which most editors want to use. So we can just kind of take that and pop that in Lexical Composer. So we add that as a child of Lexical Composer, and that extends the functionality of Lexical to then have undo redo functionality. So if I type AC in here and hit Command Z, then it should work, but it's not for whatever reason. Maybe this requires a, nope, it doesn't require that. Oh, now it's working. So, okay. Maybe it just didn't update earlier. Yeah, so if I hit AC now and then Command Z, Command Shift C, Command Z, Command Shift C, seems to work fine. Lexical is cool. Whoop. Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Z, Command Shift C. So it seems to work fine now. Cool. So that's how you would extend Lexical's functionality with a plugin. We can go kind of one step further since we're here. One of the most common things people want to do with Lexical is to get the state of Lexical at any given time and then maybe save it to a backend or something. And so we kind of make that easy with the onChange plugin that you can see here. That's it's pretty straightforward, but we can write our own to kind of illustrate a couple of concepts here. So this is just kind of getting into how you create a plugin yourself for Lexical, right? And so instead of using the onChange plugin, let's make our own onChange plugin. So we would do function my onChange. We're just making another React component here. We could later move this to a different file. My onChange plugin, take some props. Let's make props onChange, which is a function that takes the editor state of type editor state. that not get auto imported? Editor state. Okay, I'll have to import that in a second. But then it returns void. Cool. Let's try this one more time. Editor state. There we go. Okay. Right. So then we have this this function, this React component, and what we can do here is we can use some Lexical APIs like update listener to listen for updates to the editor itself, and then trigger the onChange callback that's passed in from the props. So if we go over to concepts and check out listeners, we can see the first one here is update listener, get notified when Lexical commits an update to the DOM. It looks like that's exactly what I need. So what we want to do here is probably, we need an effect here to tear down this listener. Okay, that's weird, but I'm not gonna change it right now. And so the dependency of this is going to be onChange. Oh, well, it'd be props that onChange. So let's do this. Destructure that. And so what we'll do in here is we'll say, oh, I forgot the most important part. So one of the key things that you need to do in a plugin is access the editor instance. And the way we do that is through Lexical Composer context. And so first thing you'll do is use Lexical Composer. How does it work? I cannot remember the exact name of it right now, and let me see if I can find it in the docs. So React, creating a React plugin. Use Lexical Composer context, that is the name of it. Sweet. So my autocomplete's just not working. So what we'll do here is editor equals composer context. So all we're doing here is we're going to get a reference to the editor from the composer context. See if I can remember how this is. It's really hard with the autocomplete, actually. So let me take a look at, no, this is a named import. Pretty sure it's not a top level export. Ah, there we go. Took me a second, but got it. So now we have basically through this hook, we've got access to the editor instance, and that'll be the editor that the plugin is registered on. So there's a Lexical Composer encapsulates this Lexical Composer context, which is then used to provide the editor instance to all the plugins through this hook. So you're getting it up, and you're getting access to the editor here. This doesn't have to be in the effect. This can just be here. And then in the effect, you would register an update listener. So editor.register update listener. And then from here, we would want to actually call our onChange plugin. So the update listener itself, let me make sure I remember how it works. Yep, so you get the editor state. So we can actually just destructure that on the spot. If I can get it. So we can go to this argument. So the callback that you register for the update listener will get the editor state. And then you can just call your onChange function with the editor state, and that's gonna invoke that function that you pass down in the props with whatever the latest editor state is. Oh, and we do have to return this because the the registering an update listener returns a teardown function, which we need to return from use effect to ensure that it's properly torn down. And this is also a dependency here of our effect. So that is the basics of how you would create a plugin. All this plugin does, my onChange plugin, is it takes in an onChange handler. Here we actually get access to the editor the plugin is registered on through this use Lexical Composer context hook. This is a pretty essential part of almost any plugin. Here we just destructure the props. In this effect, we register an update listener, which is going to get past the editor state. Anytime an update's made to the lexical state, it gets the new editor state, and then we just use that to invoke our onChange function. So we could do something with this like pass a state setter, or a function wrapping a state setter into the onChange, and then set that state at a level above the editor, so we can then whenever the user submits, maybe we would take that state, send it to the backend, save it in a database. So that's a pretty common example for onChange plugin. So to actually wire this up to the editor, we would have to include it as a child of Lexical Composer. We'll just do that here. My onChange plugin, we need an onChange function. And for us, that's just going to be something like this. We'll get the state, and we'll do, let's just check if it's working, right? So my onChange plugin, TypeScript. Cool. And we need to return null. But that's going to make TypeScript unhappy too, so let's just say that. So that should work. Okay. Yeah, so plugins they can be React components. They don't have to return anything. They can return something. Some use React.createPortal to render something into a different React component. So lots of different ways to do that. But a lot of plugins just don't return anything. They just return null. And then you can use editor APIs to add functionality without necessarily rendering anything. So yeah, we have the onChange plugin. So now what we would expect is, as we're changing the editor, we would see the new state in the console. So we can switch over to our console here, and we can see as we are changing it, we say hello world, like that. Let's see what some of these say. So if we go into node map, we have a root node, a paragraph node, a text node. Let's see what our text node says. So we have hello world. So it's like it's like one of the intermediate states in our where we're typing hello world. So you can see kind of, if we clear this, have hello world. If I delete the D, then the next state update is going to be having a text node that says, whoops, hello world. And if I do another one, of course you would get you can't quite see that. I'll move myself. Hello were. So as you're changing the editor, you're getting these state updates, which you can then do whatever you want with. And that is basically how it works. So we've gone through a few different concepts in this video. One is the basics, the very bare bones basis of getting a plain text editor set up in React with Lexical React. And as you can see, like, probably the hardest part is styling it. Other than that, it's just a matter of slapping some React components and a config into a React component. And so really, like, we haven't dived a lot into the initial config and like the options there, and like why would you need a theme, and which you probably would, and like how do you do rich text and all these other things, and that'll come in the future. But the other two things that we covered in this were how to add a plugin to the editor, one that we exposed, like history plugin, and we being the core team, and then another is how to make your own plugin and add it to the editor, which we showed with the onChange plugin. So we have a pretty good overview of how to basically get started with Lexical, and I think in future videos we'll start looking at how to deal with more advanced concepts, how to wire up rich text, how to wire up UI like toolbars and things like that, and how to interact with the editor in like a more sophisticated way that you might want to use for an actual project that you could be building. So yeah, thanks for your time and attention. I hope it was helpful.